had already thought that iPod was more or less dead. If these things happen, if it wasn't for the iPod, the iPhone would have never existed. It's there with the Apple II, it's there with the Mac, and it's there with the iPhone. Back in 2001, when the iPod first came out, people laughed at it. Microsoft laughed at it. So many competitors of Apple laughed at it and said, oh, this is a toy. At the end of the day, it's about having a great product. And if they're laughing at you, if they're criticizing you, that is the best. You're on the right track. And you know what? Social media is social media, whatever. You got to rise above it. This is not about the industry getting smaller. It's about separating what's good versus what's not good. If you are going for just the brand names who are just throwing money at you and then they're going to treat you like a slave or an indentured servant and you have to do what we say, those are not the relations. Those are unhealthy relationships. It is about a partnership. It's about a marriage.
Apple wouldn't be the company it is today if it wasn't for the iPod. While the gadget is gone, it would never be forgotten, not just for the role that it played in the lives of generations of people who enjoyed music, but also the role that it played in the journey of Apple itself. For without the iPod, the iPhone would never have emerged. Well, this critical insight comes from a man who led the Apple team that came up with the iPod, Tony Fadell, an American engineer, a product designer, and a superb inventor. Tony Fadell has come up with a new book called Build, which is a guide to making products worth making. And Fadell says that it is important that a lot of spotlight is shed on innovations in fields like healthcare, probably overshadowed by the glitz around gadgets. Imagine the inventor of iPod saying that. This and more in this special interview for the Economic Times. Take a look. How did you feel when you came to know that Apple was going to down the curtains on the iPod?
Well, on iPod, first of all, I had already thought that iPod was more or less dead. So, given that it was already 21 years at the time when they announced it, I thought it was, they wouldn't even announce that it was over because I thought it was already, in their minds it was over. They just had to tell the world. So I think that the march of technology continues to move faster and faster and faster. And, if these things happen, if it wasn't for the iPod, the iPhone would have never existed for many reasons, not just technological, but business reasons and market reasons. So as far as I'm concerned, while the iPod might be gone, it'll never be forgotten. It's there with the Apple II, it's there with the Mac, and it's there with the iPhone. You can't tell the Apple story without having all four of those products lined up, right? If you don't, so it'll never be forgotten. And Apple would not be the company it is today if it wasn't for the iPod, helping it get out of its, kind of malaise that was in for all of the 90s and the early 2000s, even with Steve coming back.
Give us a little context about the doldrums that you talk about and what the company was going through.
Well, let's first talk about where Apple was. So in 2000 or 1999, the iMac came out, the original iMac. It would look like Lifesaver, the Lifesaver ones, they called it. It was the white plus a color, blue, green, what have you. And that was the Internet Mac. It was a Mac that allowed you to, get on the internet and browse. And that was good. And the Mac loyalists and the faithful, which was only 1% of the US computer market, liked it. But as soon as it came out, everyone bought one. And then the company was not going anywhere. Because at the end of the day, Windows had a stranglehold on all the compatibility and Microsoft Office, those kinds of things. And nobody was willing to switch to Mac when it didn't have all the same developer support and applications and that stuff. So Apple was $500 million in debt, maybe worth $4 to $5 billion, not $2 to $3 trillion like it is today. Very, very different situation. There was no Apple retail. Apple really didn't exist in more than just the US and Japan in stores. So to be able to come out with the iPod and to change the direction of Apple, because it had been suffering since really the early 90s, until the iPod, was definitely different. So that was a big thing to realize that most people don't understand now, because they just see Apple as the biggest computer company in the world, or consumer electronics company and services company in the world. But really what it was about, the iPod existed, was because on those iMacs, those early iMacs, there was a program called iTunes. And iTunes was born out of a acquisition that was made by Steve. Jeff Robin and SoundJam was the name of the company or the product. And he bought that and he turned it into iTunes. So Jeff came on board, turned SoundJam into iTunes. And when they were working on iTunes, they were trying to hook it up to other MP3 players. So at the time, the iPod wasn't the only MP3 player. There were others out there, or there are many different ones from different brands, but they were hard to use. They didn't usually come bundled with the software, and they didn't come longer term bundled with music services, downloadable services. So it took trying iTunes out with all these different MP3 players to say, oh my God, this is a horrible experience. Steve was like, well, we'll build our own. And then I was called up as a contractor then to design it. And so those first 6 weeks as a contractor, 7-8 weeks, it was just me and designing based on the stuff that I had known from all the handheld work I had done in the past, the MP3 and digital audio work I did at Philips and in my own startup. So all of that came together, and I created the model it has a photo in the book of the original iPod or I should say prototype, styrofoam prototype that I created that ultimately turned into the iPod 8 months later.
Has Apple already crossed the point of groundbreaking development in its products, or is there more to come?
No, I think we had a groundbreaking release, and that groundbreaking release happened last year with the M1. Yeah. So the M1 processors inside of Mac, that is a huge thing. Most people are just thinking it's just another processor. Right. Most people don't understand what it takes to pull off what they did with the M1. And, that was started back in 2008 when we bought PA Semi to create processors for the iPhone and the iPad, and then ultimately the Mac. So this is a big, big deal to switch the entire Mac away from Intel onto Apple processors and all the support, and doing it without not even a little speed bump in the road. No one ever was like, oh, this is great. It's such a much better product. That is actually revolutionary, but most people don't understand that because it does somewhat the same thing it did before, but a lot more power efficient. Your battery life is so much better now. The speed is so much better now. Every compatibility between iPads and iPhones and Mac, all that stuff it's fundamental, and it is revolutionary. Just most people don't see it that way. But if they knew what it took to pull that off, you'd be very impressed.
Is it a difficult time for product builders, given that the social media is fairly critical all the time? So how does one closet oneself and focus on product building at a time of constant noise from social media?
I put this actually in the book. We talk about that and go into those details. Yeah, sure, there's social media and there's a lot. Everybody has an opinion, and now everyone can state their opinion. But back in 2001, when the iPod first came out, people laughed at it. Microsoft laughed at it. So many competitors of Apple laughed at it and said, oh, this is a toy. When the iPhone came out, they criticized and laughed at it. They said, oh, no, it'll never be anything. It's not a BlackBerry. It's not a Nokia phone. These guys are the biggest in the industry. Apple, who they think they are going to compete. Yes, everyone has an opinion, but you know what? So what? At the end of the day, it's about having a great, great product. And if they're laughing at you, if they're criticizing you, especially people that matter, people who have an opinion that counts in a way, that is the best, because then you're probably onto something. Because if you start with people first mocking it, then they kind of go, what's going on? Then they kind of get angry and then they sue you. iPod, we got sued. On the iPhone, we got sued. At Nest, they laughed at us. We got sued. You're on the right track. And you know what? Social media is social media, whatever. You got to rise above it. You got to understand the reasons and the rationales and talk to the people that matter and the opinions that matter, not just the masses who can say whatever they want. That's just how things are. And you just have to deal with it. It's just another channel to have to watch, but not necessarily listen to and react to.
Which is a product that you would aim to build? A product that addresses a real and present pain point in the market, or a product that is category creating, that is not in the market, that the market does not know it needs, but it is a product that the market deserves?
I think if there is no perceived need, it will not take off in the latter case or the former case. If people don't understand they need it because you're not addressing a pain point of something, right? Like if we go back to cars, they first wanted faster horses, but what they wanted was transportation. So if we redefine it as opposed to transportation and solving a transportation issue in a new way, yes, you're solving a pain point. Usually anything that takes off is probably redefining the space, but is solving a pain point that we already have in a new way. Okay, so if you don't start with the pain, it's very unlikely that it's going to be anything that's going to be successful, because people have to feel the need to spend their money on it. If not, there's no rational reason why you should be spending the money. Like, why am I doing it? It's just a novelty, right? They'll try it once and then they'll toss it aside, and they're not going to tell their friends about it. There's got to be a real reason. If it's just emotional, then it's just entertainment, and they try it once and they move on to the next piece of entertainment.
In India, there is now a lot of pressure on the shoulders of founders as the ecosystem goes through a corrective phase. How should founders and people dealing with products navigate this crisis and go forward?
Sure. Look, I've been through, this is my fourth downturn. I haven't gone through the fourth one yet. We're in the fourth one that I've experienced, okay? What happens is if your fundamentals are divorced from your valuation, which is what has happened, and it happened every single other time since, the other 3 times that I've seen, it's just because people got too emotional with the pricing. Everybody wanted to be in the hot deals, and too many people showed up and didn't think about the rational numbers behind it. So all you're seeing is a deflation of emotion, going back to rational, data-driven valuations. This is not about the industry getting smaller. It's about separating what's good versus what's not good. And not good and not healthy is overinflated valuations. These things don't last. That's what happens every time when there's a bubble. So all we're going back is to more rational thought. And this is it's a pendulum that swings. Life is a wave. It's not all up and it's not all down. The pendulum swings back and forth and back and forth. We went to overexcited with these valuations. It's now swung hard to the absolute rational. It's got to swing back again into the middle to get to where it's a healthy balance between founder-led versus investor-led, economics. All right. Now, if we look at this, we can get through this. You just have to think about it differently. It's not the end of the world. Like I said, I've been through 3 of them already. It's not the end. You have to think differently, and you have to go back to the basics. Actually, Build is all about, the book is all about getting back to the basics, the things that matter, how to incentivize your team, how to think about the customer, how to think about your board and your investors, and how, what your job as a CEO, as well as if you're coming into the market, as a new grad, how you should be thinking. We got overinflated. The pendulum is swung. It's not the end of the world. We have to go back to brass tacks. These things are hard to build. These companies are hard to build. It's never that easy. And all you're just seeing is the deflation is because it's not easy. People got run away with their emotions. It will come back, and some of the best companies are built in this time because the best talent's out there, the best investors are out there, and the best ideas are going to get funded because there's not a lot of noise. All those people who were just glomming on because they saw fast and easy money are going to go away. All those opportunists are going to go away. And now we're going to get back to fundamentals and the right ways to build strong companies, because everything starts small that is big today. It all starts small. So it's okay. We'll get through it. Yes, it hurts. Sure, it hurts, especially if it's your first time through it because you haven't seen anything. But guess what? It will get better. You have to go back to the fundamentals, but don't think it's over. It isn't over. You just have to find the right people, and you have to have the right idea with the right fundamentals, and you will see yourself through this.
While we are on this topic of funding drying up and founders facing crisis one after the other, there is a company that is an outlier to the entire venture capitalist model, Zoho. So what are your thoughts on this company beating a totally different path and succeeding? And is that a way forward for others too?
Yeah, it's one stance. I think if you can do that, more power to you. More power to you. If you can do that, that's great. That's not usually what you can do. And I will tell you this, I look at Zoho and I have to say they've done a phenomenal job and they've been around a long time and they've gone through downturns before. So it's wonderful. They were able to exploit a market niche and work it really hard. I have to give them credit. But at the same time, it's like saying, all food is bad. There are food that is good for you and there's food that's bad for you. To say all VCs are bad or investors are bad, that's absolutely the wrong thing. You have to find the good ones. It's not just the brands of VC, it's the people inside them and how they think and are they there to support you. So yes, you do need money. And if you can get all the money from friends and family and you have a healthy margin and you're bringing in revenue, more power to you. That's wonderful. But to say you don't need money, I'm sure he's getting money from a bank. I'm sure he's got other kinds of people who are lending him things. If you get the right kind of venture capital, and I've had those over the years, and I think we do that at FutureShape because we're investors as well. We bring value. We're not just in it for the money. Then you can actually have a valuable partner because they can help you with all kinds of, not just money, but connections, ways of thinking about the business, understanding the competitive set, helping you with recruiting. There's lots of value they can bring if you find the right ones. But if you are going for just the brand names who are just throwing money at you and then they're going to treat you like a slave or an indentured servant and you have to do what we say, those are not the relation. Those are unhealthy relationships. It is about a partnership. It's about a marriage. And that's what you need to look for. And you don't just look for the brand of money you're getting. You have to go to the individual that's going to be sitting on your board and you're working with and who can really truly help you. So my hat's off to Zoho and the founder there and everything else, but that is not the only way to be. If you can be that way, that's great. But that's unfortunately not how it can be done in every single instance.
Recently, there was a furor over matters of internal democracy and free speech within big tech companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc., facing the question of whether the employees are free to talk about whatever they want. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, as you get bigger, as the companies get bigger, you have a wide range of people that come into the company. Okay. And I'm sorry, but even in a large company, we need to separate things out from what the company culture is and what the public stance is outside. Okay, you have to have certain things about your customers and the customers you serve and everything, but you cannot politicize everything. There's certain civil rights things that need to be politicized, whether that's LGBTQ plus kinds of things, inequities, race and sexual discrimination. Those things need to absolutely be addressed. But to then side on abortion rights or side on drug, rights or these different things, left versus right issues that are very highly politicized, that cannot go on in any size organization, whether it's small or large. I'm sorry. If you're a media organization like Facebook, that's a different thing. I'm going to set those aside. But when it's technology that's neutral and is used by customers of all different types, then you do not have to have those kinds of arguments inside. So as far as I'm concerned, you need to state what your values are and what values you do not accept to be shared at work. We need to up-level our value sets. We need to be able to be very transparent on those, and employees can choose to join that company or not join that company. And if you decide that it's going to be a democracy in your organization, forget it. You'll never get anything done. It is a benevolent dictatorship at a company. Of course, there's all kinds of feedback you get from inside the company. You get from your customers as well. But it does not mean you're voting on everything. As soon as you get that, you are not going to be a high-flying company. You are not going to be able to make progress. This is not a democracy. It's a benevolent dictatorship that works with the employees, works with the customers to find the right thing, but you cannot dive into the politics of every single thing because that is not the responsibility of to the customer. The customer doesn't want to know that either. But civil rights needs to be addressed. That means inside and outside the company. Those things should be done.
As somebody who has spent a good part of his life building iconic products, what are your thoughts on the argument that not a lot of money goes into life-saving innovations or or research that goes into critical areas like healthcare.
And this is what we do at FutureShape. We're invested in over 200 companies around the world that are focused on environmental benefits, societal benefits, and health benefits. We care about disruptive technology in each of those three domains. And so I see many things all the time, whether that's climate crisis related or health related, that I look at. One company that we have is called Prenuvo, Prenuvo.com. And they are a full body scan, literally a full body scan in 50 minutes, kind of like what you do with your teeth x-rays for going to the dentist. And you can get a full body scan affordably. And it has saved 4 of my friends' lives because they detected cancers you couldn't detect any other way. So these are the kind of interesting things that are just incredibly powerful. They're consumer facing, because they're not just you go to the doctor, but it's not a gadget you put in your pocket. There's going to be all this technology that we've been building for the gadgets in your pocket are now being applied to all these applications and these problems in other verticals. And that's what's really intriguing to me. That's what's really cool. We invest in really transformative things. The issue is usually the founders who are researchers, scientists, engineers. They don't know what flash looks like. They don't understand what big and sexy looks like. So what we do is when we invest with them, we help them build out a story to show how transformative what they're making is to the world, so that journalists, people in social media, and everyone can see and feel those impacts, right? You have to just not talk about the tech. And you have to talk about the superpowers it brings. And you have to show it in the fullness and be able to communicate that in a consumer-friendly way. Because even if it's a business-to-business company, those people inside those businesses are consumers. And you need to touch them in an emotional and rational way and show them the benefits of these things. So stuff like Prenuvo, really, how do we turn that into a much bigger story so the world sees it and goes, oh my God, this is what we've been dreaming about since Star Trek. Since Star Trek came out, oh my God, a body scanner, or Star Wars. Here's a body, we have it now. Now we just have to turn that and communicate that to everyone in a very consumer-friendly way. That's the kind of stuff we need to do with climate crisis solutions and health solutions and societal solutions to get people engaged and emotional and passionate about those things, because they are so cool and so important for how we're going to be living on this planet, not just in the next years to come, but decades. Like literally think about the health system transformed because you have full body scanning to help for preventative care, not just after you have something, but before, just like you do with your teeth. Think about that. That's just, it changes everything. And so that's what we love to do. And that's why at FutureShape, we work with them. And we talked about VCs earlier and venture capitalists. When you can come in and somebody can help you design a full sales and marketing plan and messaging that creates this vision, and a realistic vision, a non-fictional one of how the world can change, people like you, journalists, will find it and want to talk about that story. Too many times it's all these geeky things just talking to other geeks. The job is to make a much bigger thing, bigger story that's true, to get the whole world, dreaming about it and actually going and experiencing it and saying, oh my God, you need to do this. That's what happened with the iPod, the iPhone, even Nest, right? Even Nest, we told the story big enough about thermostats, and people are putting thermostats under the Christmas tree, giving them as gifts, because you have to be able to tell your story, not just implement.